It's Will with AnimatedCreative.com. This is my very first tutorial for After Effects. Actually, this is my first tutorial. I think I am going to create a few other tutorials that will that should be before this one. Just some basic user interface type things. So this would be kind of like my my George Lucas Star Wars, 1, 2, and 3. I'm going to create 4, 5, and 6 first. Then we're going to go back to 1, 2, and 3 and explain the introduction to After Effects. And if that is anywhere near as interesting to you as Star Wars is, then there's something terribly wrong. Anyways, what I thought I would do today was show you how to animate a logo. And really the reason why I'm doing this is because I am in need of animating this logo right here. This is actually the logo, or one of the logos from my website that I've never really animated before. And so I opened up After Effects. I was about to do that, and I thought, you know what, why don't I make a tutorial video? Maybe it will benefit someone. So basically, I've created this logo in Illustrator. I'm not huge in Adobe Illustrator. I know how to go in there and create some things and sort of get by in it, but I don't know nearly well enough to go into trying to explain it to other people. So I am not going to do that. Instead, I'm going to tell you that basically this right here, I could have created in After Effects. There's no reason not to, especially if you're going to animate it, but I chose to create it in Illustrator for other reasons. Anyways, without further ado, let's get started. So I've already taken my my logo that I've imported. I've brought in the actual Illustrator file, and I've brought that down into a composition here. I'm going to hit Command-K on the keyboard and just make sure that, yeah, my comp is 1280 by 720. That's fine. I called it Animated Logo. Frame rate 30 frames per second. That sounds good. Duration 300 frames. That's going to be 10 seconds. That'll work for right now. So basically, I'm going to recreate this using shape layers. Now, this isn't centered, and that really would kind of bother me, but it's not really important at this point. Really, what I need to do is recreate this in After Effects in a way that is going to be conducive to animation. And so I do have something in mind. I'll probably veer away from that as I get into this. But okay, so I'm going to get started. I'm going to recreate this whole thing using shape layers. Okay, so with this Illustrator file in here, I'm going to go ahead and lock that layer because I'm just going to use it for reference. I'm going to right-click here, go to New Shape Layer. Okay, and so now I have an empty shape layer. I'm going to open up that layer there. I'm going to go to Add, and I'm going to add a path. Okay, now I'm going to hit Command+ to zoom in here. I'm going to start this path right there. Doesn't matter if it's not perfectly centered. Of course, it's not there. I'm going to hold down Shift and click, so that gives me a nice straight line there for that path. I'm going to hit V on my keyboard to get out of that. Double click there, and that's not what I wanted to do. Yeah, let me hit V again. Yeah, this is great when you're making a tutorial and something happens and you don't know why. Okay, so I grab that, and yeah, I want both of them, both those points. And there we go. Okay, so I grab those, and I'm going to bring them down here to about center right there. Okay. So now I'm going to go here to Add, and I'm going to hit Stroke, and so that's going to add a stroke to that path. You can kind of see it there. It's a pretty thin line. I'm going to open up the stroke parameter there, and I'm going to make it wider, just about the same width as that first box right there. Okay. If you really want to be precise with it, you could hit T and bring up opacity. Bring that opacity down so you can see the the object back behind it. I do this whenever I'm building something off a reference like this, and that way you can get it as close as you want. Just twirling this down, go back to Contents. There's Stroke and Stroke Width. Get that to right about there. I need this path to come out a little bit further, so I can come down here, hit Path, and just select that point right there. Hold down Shift so I don't accidentally do anything like that right there, but hold down Shift. Let me hit Command Z to undo that. Grab that, hold down Shift, and then just bring it out there as far as I need it. Whoops. As far as I need it to go. There we go. That should work. You also could just use the arrow key. If you hold down Shift and hit the arrow, that'll move it in greater increments. But holding down the arrow key will move that selected point by the pixel. Okay, so that is that. That's good. It's not 100% actually, so I'm going to move this whole thing down just a little bit, hitting the arrow key, and I'm going to bring that stroke value up just a little bit more, just to get even closer there. Now it's my logo, so I'm not going to freak out if it's not perfect. If you are working for someone else, if you're working for a paying client, obviously you want to be as precise as you possibly can with this. Okay, so I'm going to turn that layer off because I want to change the color of this stroke, and I want it to be this exact color right here. So I'm going to grab that eyedropper tool and I'm going to click on that. Okay, so you can see now I've sampled that color. So when I turn this back on, it is going to be that exact color. If I turn off that layer, you can see that it is the same color if I bring transparency back up. There you go. Okay, so there is the first part of this logo. Obviously, this logo is very simple, just made up of a couple of these rectangles. Now, in shape layer, I could have used a rectangle. I could have gone here to add and created a new rectangle and changed the size of it. I'm going to delete that for now and made it this exact size. The reason why I chose to go with a path and put a stroke on it is because I love to animate strokes with trim paths. Okay, so I'm just going to drag that trim paths down there below the stroke. If you do that, you can grab the, I'm going to turn this off again so we don't see that behind it. You can grab the start parameter and you can animate that stroke on or off. If I do it from the end, I can do that. Okay, so I'm thinking I'm going to animate it like this. I'm going to put a keyframe there on end, Command Shift right arrow for 20 frames, and I'm going to bring that over to here. Okay, so now I've got some animation happening there. Okay, not very exciting yet, but we're getting somewhere. Okay, so now let's create the rest of this. I could just create multiple shape layers. I could do a shape layer for each one of these shapes. But one of the things I love about shape layers is you can create multiple shape layers in one layer. If you've been working in After Effects for any amount of time, or if you plan on it, you will find that your projects can become very layer heavy. You know, after you've been working on something, the layers really just build up after a while. Then it can become pretty difficult to find things and easily to become disorganized. So I like shape layers because I can create lots of shapes and animate them independently, all within one layer. And here's how we do that. Before I do it, I'm going to come here to add. I'm going to add an empty group, and I'm going to put path 1, stroke 1, and trim paths 1 into that group. Okay, that's actually pretty important if you want to animate independent shapes on the same shape layer. They have to be in their own group. Okay, so I'm going to create another group. Automatically named it group 2, which is nice. I'm going to create a new path, and I'm going to zoom in right here just to get right on the edge. Zoom out. Command minus will zoom out. Holding down the shift bar, you can drag your screen around, gives you that hand, which is pretty cool. Okay, I'm going to hold down shift and click right there, gives me a nice straight line. I'm going to zoom in. Yeah, it looks pretty good. Again, this is my logo, so I'm not going to go too crazy about getting it exact because I can just change the logo whenever I want, right? So, right, I'm going to create a stroke for that path. And it is, oh, I created a fill. That's not what I meant. I want a stroke, so create a stroke. There it is. Okay, so now we've got a thin white line on that path. I'm going to increase that. Now, I want to move this thing down, and it can be kind of tricky to select those points, especially whenever you have multiple things on screen. So another way that you can move this path down, you could just, let's see, if I double click on that and hold down shift and arrow down, I can move it down that way, and that's kind of helpful. You could also come here, see where it says transform group 2. You can twirl that down, and you've got all these parameters here. I can grab this position parameter and move that down and just kind of eyeball it. I'm going to hit the arrow key to get that a little bit more precise. Eyeball that center as best I can, come back to that width and make that what I want it to be. Right about there is good. Okay, so now again, I'm going to turn this layer off so I can see the layer back behind it. I'm going to grab this eyedropper tool so that I can sample that color and get that exact color for this for the stroke on this shape. Turn this back on. Obviously, I'm going to have to do, oh no, yeah, that's right, because I've got that layer back behind that first layer. So the layer order is correct. So that's great. Okay, so let's go ahead and quickly create the rest of this. I'm going to close up group 2. This stroke that I created, it was not inside group 2, so I just put it in group 2 right there. Now I'm going to go to add, and I'm going to create group 3. See, it put group 1 inside group 2 because I had group 2 selected. So drag it out there. It automatically renames it to group 3. Drag that down right there. Add path. Here we go. Click right here. Shift, click. That's going to be close enough for now. And I'm going to create a new stroke. There it is. Grab that stroke width. Bring it up to right about there, and I'm going to arrow key here. Trying not to get too bogged down in this because I don't want the tutorial to go on and on and on and on. Okay, that's good for that. I will create trim paths for these eventually, but first I'm going to create the entire thing. Let me go ahead and group 4, create path, and get this guy right here. That's good. Add the stroke for him. Twirl that down. A lot of the same thing over and over and over again. Now, these 3 right here, they really have to be the exact same. So I'm going to go to group 3, which was this guy. I do need to change the color, but I'll do that later. I'm going to look at the width of that stroke. It is 180. Okay, so since I want these to be precise, I am going to just use that as reference and make that 180. Very good. And I can line up these positionally as well. Let's see here, transform group 4, and I want to see transform group 3 also, and position is zeroed out on group 3. Okay, where am I on group 4? It's also zeroed out, so that's not exactly what I was looking for. Here's what you can do. I'm going to hit Command R on the keyboard, and I'm going to create a guide by just simply clicking within this ruler area and dragging down. So now I can zoom in and hit spacebar and drag over to that guide right there, and I can grab it and move it around. Now, if you're trying to do this and you're trying to move a guide around and you're not able to move it, you might have to come here to View and turn off Lock Guides. If Lock Guides is activated there, you won't be able to move that guide layer. Okay, so I am going to put a guide right about here, and I want to visually just line these things up to that guide. So come over here to this. Now, as I drag this, that's really just kind of moving it too fast, and it's making it difficult to line it up precisely. So I'm going to hold down the command button, and that slows it way down. That moves it in increments of 1/10 of a pixel, I believe is what that does. Okay, so that looks good for group 4. I'm going to do the same thing for group 3. I'll find that position there. There it is. And I'm just going to line that up right there. Now, we're at 400% here. I know you can kind of tell that that pixel looks to be bleeding over the line a little bit, but if I back it out there to 100%, that looks right on the money. So I'm not going to worry too much more about it. Okay. Now, here's another thing that I'm going to do. Instead of going through the process of creating a new group and a new path, all I really need to do is grab group 4, which is this guy, and hit Command D to duplicate it. And you can see that it duplicated a group. It called it group 5, and it put it right up above group 4. I'm going to drag that down so that it's below. Okay. So what's really happened here is this stroke has been copied and pasted right on top of the other one. If I grab right here, if I grab group 5 right there, let me try it this way. Nope. It can be kind of difficult to grab these things and move them around. Transform group 5 is what I'm looking for. I'm going to twirl that down, and I'm going to just move it over here slightly. And then what I need to do is make that path smaller so that it lines up better with the existing graphic there. So I selected path, click on, click away so that I deselect both of them because I just want, there I lost it again. Sorry, it can be a little bit tricky. I just want the one. So there we go. By clicking and dragging there, I'm able to do exactly what I want. If I hold down the shift bar, that'll make it so that I can't move it vertically. I'm just moving it on the x-axis, which is what I want. I'm going to grab that one, bring that into right about there. Again, we're 800% there, so even though it doesn't look perfect up at that, zoomed in that far, bringing it back out to 100%, you can see that looks pretty good. Okay, now I'm going to change the colors of these things. So I'm going to turn that off. Group 5 was my last one, so I'm going to come here into the stroke parameter there. I'm going to grab that, sample that color exactly, and that's good for that. I'm going to do the same thing for group 4. Come into that stroke, grab that color picker there. There we go. And I think I need to do the same thing for group 3. Where's my stroke for group 3? Here it is. Yep, that's still white, so grab that, and there we have it. All right, so I'm going to turn that back on and turn that off, and so now you can see this. I need to animate these other guys as well. So let me do that also. Let me close up these groups. Group 1, I've added the trim paths and animated it already, so I'm going to open up group 2. I'm going to go to Add and Trim Paths, and you can see it put a trim paths into group 2. All right. So I'm going to, let's see. Yeah, I think I'm going to animate it the same way as the other one. So I'm going to take end down to 0. I'm going to keyframe that, and I'm going to hit Command Shift right arrow twice and bring that back out here. There we go. I'll move these keyframes around a little bit later to get them a little bit more precise, but for now I'm just going to go through here to group 3. Make sure group 3 is selected, add trim paths. There we go. And I'm going to take end down to 0, keyframe, Command Shift right arrow twice. What I'm doing there is I'm moving. If you command, hold down Command and just hit the right arrow. By the way, I'm on a Mac, so when I say Command and you're on a PC, just think Control. If I hit Command and right arrow, that moves my playhead 1 frame at a time. If I hold Command and Shift down and hit my arrow keys, that moves me 10 frames. Okay, I'm going to hit K. On the keyboard. That's a keyboard shortcut that will go to the next open keyframe, all right? Just to line up to that keyframe right there. That's fine, doesn't really matter. But so Command Shift, right arrow twice, and that is that's what I wanted to do there. Got myself a little tongue-tied there. Make sure, I'm going to hit J, make sure that this is all the way down to 0. See right there, it's at 1, so I want that to start from nothing, so right there at 0. Great. Let me close up group 3. Let me open up group 4. I have a little bit of trouble here with my pen and tablet. Okay. Add, before it disappears on me. Trim paths, there it is. And down to 0. Click on that stopwatch. Command Shift, right arrow twice. There we go. And then quickly, group 5. Hold down space bar, gives you that hand. You can move up and down on your timeline panel here also, which is kind of nice. So add trim paths. And there we go. It's very important that you have the group selected that you want the element to go into. If I don't have a group selected, it will put it, I think it'll just put it outside of the group. Or if I accidentally have group 1 selected, it's going to put it in group 1. So it's important that you kind of stay on top of that. Okay, it can be kind of annoying to work with shape layers like this, but once you get the hang of it, it really is pretty powerful. It's a lot of fun. Okay, hit that stopwatch, Command Shift, right arrow twice, and there we go. Okay, now I'm going to hit Command A to select everything, and I'm going to hit U on my keyboard. What that does is it reveals just the keyframes that I've created. It gets rid of all those other parameters that I no longer need to see. And so I see that this first set right here is for that first shape. Okay, and then here's the second shape coming in, third and fourth and fifth. Okay, so I am going to sort of line these up a little bit, maybe stagger them some. I'll try that. Again, I don't really have a clear thing in the top of my head. I will probably, when this whole thing is said and done, I will have an example of it just sort of at the beginning so that people can watch it and see if it is in fact something that they want to waste their time watching or not. Okay, so And you can see right here, it looks like, yep, I don't have this guy already all the way keyframe down to 0. So I am going to hit the K button on my keyboard, which advances to those visible keyframes. So I get to that one, take it back down to 0. There we go. Okay, now this is somewhat boring. I'm going to go ahead and label this as logo animated. I'm going to spell animated correctly. One thing that you'll see about me is I'm not that great of a typist. Animated logo is my folder. There we go. That's good. Okay, so so it's kind of animating out on screen, but it's sort of boring. It's what we call linear interpolation, where from this keyframe to this keyframe, we are moving with a constant velocity. Sometimes that's what you want. Most of the times it's not. It's not very, well, I guess it's just not very realistic. You know, a big part of animating is picking up on nature and the way things move in nature, the way things behave because of physics and whatnot. The more you learn about that, the better of an animator you're actually going to become. Anyways, the quick shortcut that After Effects gives you for changing that interpolation is you can select all of your keyframes and hit the F9 key on your keyboard. Now what you can see has happened here is those keyframes have now changed to this hourglass figure. And so now that interpolation is slightly different. Instead of moving with a constant velocity from one keyframe to another, we are kind of slowly, excuse me, slowly moving out of a keyframe, pushing a little bit, and then slowing before we move into that final keyframe. That's called easing, okay? And what we've done here is we have utilized what After Effects calls easy ease, okay? So by selecting your keyframes and hitting F9, that will, excuse me, by selecting your keyframes and hitting F9, that will create the easing that I'm talking about right here. This is much better visualized if we go into the graph editor. Okay, so I'm going to select these two keyframes right here. Those will be the ones that we're going to focus on, and I'm going to click on this icon right here for graph editor. Okay, and so now you can see this this curve. This is a representation of really just those first those two keyframes that I selected. If I hit that again, I can come back here and see that. So graph editor, this is showing me those first two keyframes. That's what this is also over here. If I select these other parameters, this will be showing me the curve for those other keyframes. Okay, so if I want to manipulate this, and I highly recommend manipulating your animation in the graph editor, I can just grab both of those keyframes, and you can see since they've been easy eased, I have these Bezier handles that I can move around. Okay, real quick, I'll show you over here, these icons right here. These, let's see, convert keyframes to linear, that's what I'm looking for. This is what, by default, this was the interpolation. This was the linear interpolation that was occurring. And you can see, here's the first keyframe, here's the second keyframe. By the way, this is showing you velocity or speed. Okay, it's the speed graph. You could change that by coming down to here and looking at the value graph. But right now we're looking at speed graph. Okay, and so this is velocity, and so it's showing you the velocity as we move from this keyframe to this keyframe, and it's a straight line. It's linear. Okay, by selecting all of that and then hitting this icon right here, easy ease, that is the exact same thing as hitting F9 on your keyboard. Okay, but I generally never just leave it as easy ease. I'll usually come in and adjust these handles slightly, and watch what happens when we do that. So now we're going to move out of that keyframe a little slower. We're going to ramp up to this point right here, which is going to be the fastest that we're going to be, and then we're going to ramp back down slowly, come in to that keyframe. And so you can see the on the orange box there sort of is a little bit more interesting. Okay, that motion just a little bit more interesting. Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing for these other guys. I'm going to grab these keyframes, grab that handle in a little bit. If you hold down Shift, that'll stop you from moving the keyframe around there. And I'm going to do the same thing for this guy here. So yeah, when you're new at the graph editor, it can be a little bit daunting and time consuming, but I highly recommend putting in the time to get more comfortable with this thing, because all of the great animators that you see are utilizing it. This is it gives you so much control over your animation. And they'll probably be, I'll probably do a tutorial based on nothing but the graph editor eventually. But for now, I'm going to call that good. So I'm going to say that that's about going to do it for maybe the way this thing animates on. I might change it a little bit later if I think of something a little bit more creative. But for the sake of this tutorial, I think I'm going to leave it right about there. Maybe move these keyframes over so it comes on just a little quicker. And now I need to bring on text, okay? So I want it to say Animated Creative. Oh, by the way, since this is all on one layer, if I collapse all this and bring that back down again, you can see all these groups, all these shapes. Since it's on one layer, if I want to move the whole thing around, all I have to do is grab that Layers Transform properties and move it. Okay, I don't have to grab each individual thing and move it around. So that's another nice thing about doing all this work on a shape layer. Okay. I wonder what would happen. I don't know if this will work or not. I'm going to hit this layer and go to Window, Align, and see if I can center it. Yeah, it's not quite going to center it. If I did this a little bit differently, that would have worked out. But again, maybe another tutorial we'll talk about that. But I do use that Align option quite a bit. Since we created paths, our own paths, that kind of throws that off just a little bit, and it's not going to quite work out the way I want it to. Okay, all right. So here we go. We have that coming on there, and now I need some text to appear. So the first thing I'm going to do is just create that text layer. I'm going to right-click down here, New Text, and it might be hard to see there, but I get a little icon on screen. I can just start typing Animated, and maybe I'll do another text layer and type creative. All right, so I'm going to hit V to get out of that tool and move this around. Maybe I want this to be, I haven't created a background yet. So what I did right there was I toggled the transparency grid. So if you toggle that, really you're toggling between just a background that will not render. Well, it will render if you don't render it with an alpha channel. But if you render with an alpha channel, that background will not render. Okay, and so toggling that off, I can see that I don't have a background in this layer, and that's fine for right now. So Animated Creative. I'm going to grab this guide layer. I'm going to bring it down here so that I can kind of line my text up on it, just like that. Kind of gives me a nice snap into place there. And I'm fine with this font for right now. Animated, I'm going to change. I'm going to just kind of do a stylistic thing here. And yeah, I'm going to do that. Yeah, that's going to be good. And creative, maybe I'll make it bigger. And just kind of move it around a little bit. Maybe I want it down here. Maybe I want to do that. That might be kind of cool. Maybe I want to get a guide layer here, bring that in just like that. And on this word creative, maybe I want to, let's left align that word and drag it back into place right here. You know what? I don't want to left align. I want to right align. That'll work better. And so I can snap that right on that guide there, so it's lined up perfectly with the edge of that A for Animated. And now I can drag this down, this type size down, and try to get it so that it takes up the same amount of space. I don't know if I'm going to like this or not, but for now, that's what I'm going to go with. Let me just kind of line that up there as best I can. Zoom in so I can get a better look there. Still on creative. No, I'm not. Select creative again. And drag that. Hold down Command so that moves a little bit slower there. That'll work. Okay, and let's say I'm going to move both of these. I don't know. Maybe right there, maybe right here. I'm sort of rebranding as we speak. Anyways. Maybe I want creative to be, you know what, maybe I want Animated to be not quite as heavy there. Maybe I can make that light. Yeah, maybe try that. Animated creative. Okay, so I've got the logo coming on right there, and I want this text to animate on sort of in an interesting way. Here's what I'm going to do. I am going to sort of have the text appear out of nowhere. Let me make that just a little bit smaller there. Okay, this will make more sense as I do it. So I'm going to turn off creative for now, and I'm just going to work with Animedia and drag that down so it's in order. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I am going to deselect everything, and I'm going to create a new shape layer. And I'm just going to drag on screen right there. That's good that it snaps down to that line. Hit V on my keyboard, slide this over, hit Shift so it doesn't move around. There we go. Okay, so this shape layer is directly above Animedia. Now I'm going to go to the track matte option here and go from none. I'm going to say alpha matte inverted. Nope, alpha matte. Alpha matte is what I want. And so what's happening is this Animedia will not show up unless it is in front of this shape layer. Now when I change that to alpha matte, it automatically turned this shape layer off, which is exactly what I want. I don't want to see that shape layer. I just want it there for Animedia. So watch what happens when I move Animedia down. As it goes down below where that shape layer begins, it disappears. So what I'm going to do, hit Command Z. I'm going to come to right about here, and I'm going to put a keyframe on position, and I'm going to hit Command Shift back once for 10 frames, and I'm going to move this down. Okay? And so now you can see it kind of appears up out of nowhere. All right, let me turn that shape layer back off. This shape layer right here, let me turn it back on so we can see where it is. I'm going to now duplicate that shape layer. I'm going to move it down to Creative. Okay? Let me turn these shape layers back off. I'm going to move it down so that it's right above Creative in the layer order there, in the layer stack. I'm going to turn it off, and on Creative, I'm going to do Alpha Inverted, which is going to be the opposite, which means the word Creative will not show up if it is taking up the same space as that shape layer right there. Okay, so hit Command Z. Hit K to come to that keyframe to line this up. I'm going to put a position keyframe there. Hit J so that it lines up with that keyframe, and I'm going to move this up. So now what we have is the text sort of appears like that, which is kind of a cool thing. I don't know. I kind of like it. Maybe you don't, and if you don't, then let me know, and maybe I'll try to do it a different way. I probably won't. I probably won't spend any more time on it. I'll probably never use this again. Maybe not. I don't know. We'll see. Okay, let's see here. All right, so let me turn on this shape layer, and let me zoom out a little bit so that we can see what we have happening here. And there we go. Okay, that's probably going to do it for me. Oh, before I leave, let's open up the graph editor. Now, since I had both of those selected when I opened the graph editor, I'm going to hit H. No, that didn't do what I wanted it to do. I want to zoom in a little bit. I'm thinking of Cinema 4D, I believe. Okay, anyways, that's fine. I'm going to hit that icon right there with both of those selected. I'm going to drag that handle out, drag this handle in, come out of that graph editor. So now they animate it a little bit more interesting. I'm going to make that happen over a little bit more time. There you go. And if you wanted it to animate off in a quick and easy way, you can hit Command A and hit the U key a couple of times to bring up all of the keyframes. And I could just start with this set of keyframes here and hit Command C and Command V. That copy those keyframes over here. I can right click on that, go to Keyframe Assistant, Time Reverse. I wonder if I can do that for all of these at the same time. Yes, awesome. I'm going to stagger that a little bit and right click, Time Reverse, and so now they will disappear the same way they appeared. Do the same thing for these. Now you can only grab the keyframes that are on that layer. If I tried to grab all of these keyframes right here and did Command C and Command V, it would actually duplicate those layers. That's not what I want to do. So just grab those keyframes right there, Command C, Command V, right click, Keyframe Assistant, Time Reverse. There we go. Same thing down here. Command C, Command V, Keyframe Assistant, Time Reverse. Maybe stagger that some if you want. Yep, and there you go. It's gone. I'm going to hit N right there on my keyboard to shorten that, and right-click, trim comp to work area, and there you have it. So you've got a logo creating there and disappearing. Okay, so maybe that was helpful for you. The thing about tutorials, even if it's not something that you're that interested in creating, there are a lot of things along the way that you can pick up. So I highly recommend going through these things, and if you see something that you didn't know, or maybe a keyboard shortcut, keep a notebook, jot that stuff down. Eventually, it'll get in your head, and you won't need to look at it anymore. But the keyboard shortcuts really are key when it comes to becoming efficient in After Effects. So hope you enjoyed that. Please, send me an email. Let me know. Send me a note. You can go to the homepage of my website and just scroll down, and you can fill in a little form there to send me an email, or you could just send it to will@animediacreative.com. Please, give me some pointers. Give me some advice. I'm looking for it. I'm brand new at this. I've been watching tutorials for years and years and years and learning. But as far as creating my own, this is really the first real one that I've ever made. So hope you enjoyed it. Please send me some ideas for other tutorials, other things. You can send me links to videos on Vimeo if there's anything that you see that you'd like to learn how to create. Maybe I can do it for you. So hope you enjoyed it. Hope to see you soon. Thanks, guys.